Today, more than 4.5 million students are enrolled in colleges and universities outside their own countries. While some countries welcome international students with open arms, others strongly oppose their entrance. We will explore the impact of international students and analyze the policies that are typically used to address these issues. Let's begin our discussion with an analysis of the positive and negative externalities. Starting with the positives, the fees of these international students subsidize local student fees and add to the state's fund. Owing to their diverse educational and cultural background, they are able to bring in varied perspectives and ideas into the classroom. Additionally, they contribute to the human capital of the host country via new skills and knowledge. After completing their education, those who stayed behind can contribute to the host country. Firstly, they boost the competitiveness of the economy through job competition, and when employed, they pay taxes, adding to the government fund. Additionally, cross-border interactions foster a greater understanding and respect for other cultures. An amalgamation of diverse cultures helps in the integration of international markets. On the other hand, some countries such as the UK and recently the US have been restricting the inflow of foreign students. They argue that foreign talent can reduce job prospects and wages for local graduates. Also, financial support of these international students in terms of additional infrastructure and stipends adds. As we saw, there are some positive and negative externalities. Let's look into the research to see what empirical evidence suggests. 2011 research on the cost-benefit analysis of international students in Germany suggests over 160,000 international students contributing over 4 million euros in fiscal revenue, spending over 1.5 billion euros and adding value to the economy. It is noteworthy that public investment in international students paid itself if 30% of the graduates work for 5 years, adding value to the economy with 33,000 new jobs. Doesn't this suggest that the positive externalities outweigh the negative externalities? However, these benefits may take time to materialize, which may be the reasons for their focus on the short-term cost rather than the long-term benefits. It all boils down to behavioral biases. Human beings tend to show a preference for something that arrives sooner than later, and in the process discount the value of the future reward. This bias in human behavior causes inconsistent intertemporal choice and is known as the present bias. The citizens of the country suffer from present bias and hence discount the future gains. They would be opposed to the idea of opening doors to international students as they maximize their current utility and not the combined utility of the entire period. The government will succumb to this present bias of the citizens in order to remain popular. The reasons why government act in a suboptimal manner is because they inappropriately use policies relating to international students as a mechanism to deal with social issues and economic slowdowns. One of the main reasons to restricting entries of foreign students is to mitigate this disruption to social fabrics, fearing that these foreigners will contribute to higher crime rates or that they do not fit into the local society creates a xenophobic culture that causes the government to restrict or limit their entry. Some countries might argue that the restriction is due to national security reasons, such as keeping out of potential terrorists. On the contrary, a report of the Strategic Task Force on International Students Access, led by former US Secretary of Defense William J. Perry, believes that welcoming international students is part of the solution to the terrorists, not part of the problem, as the terrorist threat highlights the importance of building friends and allies across the world through openness of people. Other reason is to protect the placement of local people. This can be seen in Malaysia where indigenous Malays have preferential treatment like the placements in their local university. Similarly, limiting foreign students could also be seen as a measure to curb economic slowdowns, particularly one resulting in high unemployment as countries are more inclined to reserve jobs for locals by eliminating foreign competition and restricting the entry of foreign talents and students. The above-mentioned policy responses could be as a result of government's political standing, as seen in the case of Malaysia, or giving in to citizens' demands in the pursuit of power. However, this short-term policy planning fails to see the long-term benefits that international students bring. Ultimately, government's decision is somewhat influenced by behavioral biases as they are intrinsic in human nature, both citizens and governmental bodies alike.
So, what are the options available to the government for international students policy? In a utopian world, there are a few policy tools that a benevolent social planner in the form of a government can do to increase the international student population. Some forward-looking countries such as Canada, Australia, and Singapore have adopted some of these strategies. One of the tools available is visa processing and quota. Immigration policy can be used by policymakers as a strategy for facilitating entry of international students. Of course, visa application criteria and acceptance for these students must be made on merit and ability to contribute to the economy. Countries can also provide tuition grants to international students to subsidize the cost of studying abroad. These grants can act as bonds to ensure students contribute to the economy upon graduation, or pay back tuition fees acting as a loan. Furthermore, countries like Canada and Australia offers post-study work permits for 2 to 4 years after graduation. Countries are also expanding the opportunities granted to international students to remain in the country and contribute economically. Finally, government can actively market their education institutes. For instance, participation in education fairs, joint venture programs with institutions overseas would promote their schools. And now, the harsh reality. We have seen utopia where policy tools should have facilitated achieving the socially optimal level. But why are they not working in reality?
I would build a great wall, and nobody builds walls better than me, believe me. And I'll build them very inexpensively.
The harsh reality is that governments are using some of these tools in opposite ways. What are some governments doing? In fact, some governments are increasing administrative burden like making visa more expensive and even to the extent of using questionable measures like discriminatory checks and allowing social media to play up xenophobic sentiments. If the positive externalities outweigh the negative, shouldn't the government be encouraging the inflow of international students? Let's explore this puzzle with UK as an example, one of the countries which has recently tried to reduce the number of international students. In its election manifesto of 2015, the Conservative Party outlined its long-term economic plan. We focus on capping welfare, controlling migration, and preserving the British value. The Conservative Party won an election and has to deliver its electoral promises, including migration control. Wait, the party seems to be concentrating on what the people feels happy about. Where is the element of social efficiency in this equation? Shouldn't this be one of the core functions of the government to intervene and resolve inefficiencies? Did the people really voted for lesser international students or lesser illegal and low-skilled? The British Future and University UK did some research and found out that most people do not see international students as migrants. They also expressed that it might be time for politicians to make distinction between illegal immigrant, low-skilled immigrant, and international students. So is this a case of miscommunication between the elected government and the citizens? Or is this an overzealous interpretation of what the people want? Again, we begin to see the gap that the government's core decision seems to be centered on what the people want instead of what they really need. The ruling party needs to stay in favor. The government might have recognized the benefits of international students, but never had the intention to achieve the socially optimal sweet spot, as they believe that this isn't what the masses preferred. Government intervention might not solve this market failure problem. We have thus far argued that the mandate of the people drives the behavior of the government. To stay in power, the politicians has to please the masses. The ruling party actually has no incentive to maximize social welfare if citizens cannot receive the benefits immediately and translate them into electoral support. Although the government can guess what the people want, it might not be able to pinpoint the exact socially optimal level. Therefore, most government intervention tools suffer a potential mistargeting or might utterly misinterpret the preference of the people and implement the wrong policies. So, will it be a case where the benevolent social planner can never exist under democracy and that there will be no solution to the externality problem? We think that the beauty of democracy is that decision making can be an iterative process. People express their dissatisfaction and the government changes accordingly. Due to the deep-seated political agenda, the market failure caused by externalities of international students cannot be fully addressed by conventional economic tools. The onus will be then on the people to vote wisely.